Part 3, Chapter 4-ish. We'll get straight into it. It is our first class together. In the spring of 1976, I enter Morrie's large office and notice a seemingly countless books that line the wall, shelf after shelf. Books on sociology, philosophy, religion, psychology. There is a large rug on the hardwood floor and a window that looks out on the campus. Only a dozen or so students are there, fumbling with notebooks and syllabi. Most of them wear jeans and earth shoes and plaid flannel shirts. I tell myself it will not be easy to cut a class this small. Maybe I shouldn't take it. Mitchell, Morrie says, reading from the attendance list. I raise a hand. Do you prefer Mitch, or is Mitchell better? I've never been asked this by a teacher before. I do a double take at this guy in his yellow turtleneck and green corduroy pants, the silver hair that falls on his forehead. He's smiling. Mitch, I say. Mitch is what my friends call me. Well, Mitch it is then, Morrie says, as if closing a deal. And, Mitch, yes, I hope that one day you will think of me as your friend. The orientation. As I turned the rental car onto Morrie Street in West Newton, a quiet suburb of Boston, I had a cup of coffee in one hand and a cellular phone between my ear and my shoulder. I was talking to a TV producer about a piece we were doing. My eyes jumped from the digital clock. My return flight was in a few hours, to the mailbox numbers on the tree-lined suburban street. The car radio was on, the all-news station. This was how I operated, 5 things at once. Roll back the tape, I said to the producer. Let me hear that part again. Okay, he said. It's gonna take a second. Suddenly, I was upon the house. Now, 5 minutes later, Morrie was hugging me, his thinning hair rubbing against my cheek. I had told him I was searching for my keys. That's what had taken me so long in the car. I squeezed him tighter, as if I could crush my little lie. Although the spring sunshine was warm, he wore a windbreaker, and his legs were covered by a blanket. He smelled faintly sour, the way people on medication sometimes do, with his face pressed close to mine. I could hear his labored breathing in my ear. My old friend, he whispered, you've come back at last. He rocked against me, not letting go, his hands reaching up for my elbows as I bent over him. I was surprised at such affection after all these years. In the stone walls I had built between my present and past, I had forgotten how close we once were. I remembered graduation day, the briefcase, his tears at my departure, and I swallowed because I knew, deep down, that I was no longer the good, gift-bearing student he remembered. I only hoped that, for the next few hours, I could fool him. Inside the house, we sat at a walnut dining room table, near a window that looked out on the neighbor's house. Morrie fussed with his wheelchair, trying to get comfortable. As was his custom, he wanted to feed me, and I said all right. One of the helpers, a stout Italian woman named Connie, cut up bread and tomatoes and brought containers of chicken salad, hummus, and tavioli. She also brought some pills. Morrie looked at them and sighed. His eyes were more sunken than I remember, and his cheekbones were more pronounced. This gave him a harsher, older look, until he smiled, of course, and the sagging cheeks gathered up like curtains. Mitch, he said softly, you know that I am dying. I knew. All right then, Morrie swallowed the pills, put down the paper cup, inhaled deeply, then let it out. Shall I tell you what it's like? What it's like? To die? Yes, he said. Although I was unaware of it, our last class had just begun. Quick side note, you guys, I just realized that they have little flashbacks in here, so from now on I'm gonna put it somewhere up here that the flashback is happening. It is my freshman year. Morrie is older than most of the teachers, and I am younger than most of the students, having left high school a year early. To compensate for my youth on campus, I wear old gray sweatshirts, and I box in a local gym and walk around with an unlit cigarette in my mouth, even though I do not smoke. I drive a beat-up Mercury Cougar with the windows down and the music up. I seek my identity in toughness, but it is Morrie's softness that draws me, and because he does not look at me as a kid trying to be something more than I am, I relax. I finish that first course with him and enroll for another. He is an easy marker. He does not care much for grades. One year, they say, during the Vietnam War, Morrie gave all his male students A's to help them with their student deferments. I began to call Morrie Coach, the way I used to address my high school track coach. Morrie likes the nickname. Coach, he says. Alright, I'll be your coach, and you can be my player. You can play all the lovely parts of life that I'm too old for now. Sometimes we eat together in the cafeteria. Morrie, to my delight, is even more of a slob than I am. He talks instead of chewing, laughing with his mouth open. Delivers a passionate, though through a mouthful of egg salad, the little yellow pieces spewing from his mouth. It cracks me up. The whole time I know him, I have two overwhelming desires: to hug him and to give him a napkin. The classroom. The sun beamed in through the hard dining room window, lighting up the hardwood floor. We had been talking for nearly 2 hours. The phone rang, yet again, and Morrie asked his helper, Connie, to get it. She had been jotting the callers' names in Morrie's small black appointment book. Friends, meditation teachers, a discussion group, someone who wanted a photograph of him for a magazine. It was clear I was not the only one interested in visiting my old professor. That Nightline appearance made him somewhat of a celebrity. But I was impressed with, perhaps even a bit envious of, all the friends that Morrie seemed to have. I thought about the buddies that circled my orbit back in college. Where had they gone? You know, Mitch, now that I'm dying, I've become much more interesting to people. You were always interesting. Oh, Morrie said, you're kind. No, I'm not, I thought. Here's the thing. People see me as a bridge. I'm not as alive as I used to be. But I'm not yet dead. I'm sort of in between. He coughed, then he regained his smile. I'm on the last great journey here, and people want me to tell them what to pack. The phone rang again. Morrie, can you talk? Connie asked. I'm visiting with my old pal now, he announced. Let them call back. I cannot tell you why he received me so warmly. I was hardly the promising student who had left him 16 years earlier. Had it not been for Nightline, Morrie might have died without ever seeing me again. I had no good excuse for this, except for the one that everyone these days seems to have. I had become too busy wrapped up in the siren song of my own life. I was busy. What happened to me, I asked myself. Morrie's high, smoky voice took me back to my university years, when I thought rich people were evil, a shirt and a tie were prison clothes, and life without freedom to get up and go, motorcycle beneath you, breeze in your face, down the street of Paris, into the mountains of Tibet, was not a good life at all. What happened to me? The 80s happened. The 90s happened. Death and sickness and getting fat and going bald happened. I traded a lot of dreams for a bigger paycheck, and I never even realized I was doing it. Yet, here was Morrie, talking with the wonder of our college years, as if I'd simply been on a long vacation. Have you found someone to share your heart with? He asked. Are you giving to your community? Are you at peace with yourself? Are you trying to be as human as you can be? I squirmed, wanting to show that I had been grappling deeply with such questions. What happened to me? I once promised myself I would never work for money, that I would join the Peace Corps, that I would live in beautiful, inspirational places. Instead, I had been in Detroit for 10 years now, at the same workplace, using the same pick, visiting the same barber. I was 37, more efficient than in college, tied to computers and modems and cell phones. I wrote articles about rich athletes who, for the most part, could not care less about people like me. I was no longer young for my peer group, nor did I walk around in gray sweatshirts with unlit cigarettes in my mouth. I did not have long discussions over egg salad sandwiches about the meaning of life. My days were full, yet I remained, much of the time, unsatisfied. What happened to me? Coach, I said suddenly, Morrie beamed. That's me. I'm still your coach. He laughed and resumed his eating, a meal he had started 40 minutes earlier. I watched him now. His hands worked gingerly, as if he were learning to use them for the very first time. He could not press down hard with a knife. His fingers shook. Each bite was a struggle. He chewed the food finely before swallowing, and sometimes it slid out the sides of his lips, so that he had to put down what he was holding to dab his face with a napkin. The skin from his wrist to his knuckles was dotted with aging spots, and it was loose, like skin hanging from a chicken. For a while, we just ate like that. A sick old man, a healthy younger man, both absorbing the quiet of the room. I would say it was an embarrassed silence, but I seemed to be the only one that was embarrassed. Dying, Morrie suddenly said. It's the only thing to be sad over, Mitch. Living unhappily is something else. So many people who come to visit me are unhappy. Why? Well, for one thing, the culture we have does not make people feel good about themselves. We're teaching the wrong things. And you have to be strong enough to say if the culture doesn't work, don't buy it. Create your own. Most people can't do it. They're more unhappy than me, even in my current condition. I may be dying, but I'm surrounded by loving, caring souls. How many people can say that? I was astonished by his complete lack of self-pity. Morrie, who could no longer dance, swim, bathe, or walk. Morrie, who could no longer answer his own door. Morrie, who could no longer dry himself after a shower or even roll over in bed. How could he be so accepting? I watched him struggle with his fork, picking at a piece of tomato, missing it for the first 2 times. A pathetic scene, yet I can only deny that sitting in his presence was almost magically serene. The same calm breeze that soothed me back in college. I shot a glance at my watch. Force of habit. It was getting late. I thought about changing my plane reservation home. Then Morrie did something that haunts me to this day. You know how I'm gonna die, he said. I raised my eyebrows. I'm going to suffocate. Yes. My lungs, because my asthma can't handle the disease. It's moving up my body. This ALS. It's already got my legs. Pretty soon, it'll get my arms and hands. And when it hits my lungs, he shrugged his shoulders. I'm sunk. I had no idea what to say. So I said, well, you never know. Morrie closed his eyes. I know, Mitch. You mustn't be afraid of dying. I've had a good life, and we all know it's gonna happen. Maybe I have 4 or 5 months. Come on, I said nervously. Nobody can say I can. Morrie interrupted. There's even a little test a doctor showed me. A test. Inhale a few times. It did as he said. Now 1 more time. But this time when you exhale, count as many numbers as you can before taking another breath. I quickly exhaled the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I reached 70 before my breath was gone. Good, Morrie said. You have healthy lungs. Now, watch what I do. He inhaled, then began his number count in a soft, wobbly voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. He stopped, gasping for air. When the doctor first asked me to do this, I could reach 23. Now it's 18. He closed his eyes and shook his head. My tank's almost empty. I tapped my thighs nervously. That was enough for one afternoon. Come back and see your old professor, Morrie said, when I hugged him goodbye. I promised I would. I tried not to think about the last time I promised this. In the campus bookstore, I shopped for the items on Morrie's reading list. I purchased books that I never knew existed. Titles such as Youth, Identity, and Crisis, I and Thou, The Divided Self. Before college, I did not know the study of human relations could be considered scholarly until I met Morrie. I did not believe it. But his passion for books is real and contagious. We began to talk seriously sometimes, after class when the room had emptied. He asked me questions about my life, then quotes from Martin Buber, Erik Erikson. Often he defers to their works, footnoting his own advice, even though he obviously thought the same things himself. It is at these times that I realize he is indeed a professor, not an uncle. One afternoon, I am complaining about the confusion of my age, what is expected for me versus what I want for myself. Have I told you about the tension of opposites? He said. The tension of opposites. Life is a series of pulls back and forth. You want to do one thing, but you are bound to do something else. Something hurts you, yet you know you shouldn't. You take certain things for granted, even when you know you should never take anything for granted. A tension of opposites, like a pull on a rubber band, and most of us live somewhere in the middle. Sounds like a wrestling match, I say. A wrestling match. He laughs. You can describe it that way. So which side wins, I ask. Which side wins? He smiles at me, the crinkled eyes, the crooked teeth. Love wins. Love always wins. And that concludes the book reading. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. We will definitely be finishing this book. You guys seem to like it. I love it.